When it comes to her identity, Rebecca Munro says being an Indigenous person always comes first. She is originally from the Lytton First Nation and has been with the BC RCMP Indigenous Policing Services for 12 years.
As an Indigenous woman in the RCMP, I do carry a heavy responsibility because I am a minority in a variety of ways. I joined the RCMP to work in Indigenous communities, so having that reason why really helps me fulfill my commitment to ensuring that Indigenous communities are kept safe.
The overrepresentation of Indigenous people in Canada's justice system is one of the reasons that pushed Munro into policing.
Part of my motivation to join the RCMP was to help my people and my community, my Inlakupma community. I come from Indian residential school survivors. So my grandparents, my parents went to residential school in Lytton at the St. George's Indian Residential School. And I saw the hurt and the trauma and saw how they were, have been treated in various parts of the justice system.
The First Nations and Inuit policing program was created in 1991. It is managed by Public Safety Canada and funded by federal, provincial and territorial government. Its goal, among other things, is to provide culturally responsive policing in First Nations and Inuit communities. Munro says the RCMP needs more Indigenous officers.
I have spent my entire career recruiting and looking for those members. Officially now, I am an Indigenous recruiter, so that is my substantive role. My everyday motivation is just looking at our communities and looking at the young people and thinking about the difference I'm making to help change that relationship that the police have been viewed in the past.
Despite these goals, Indigenous policing programs are still not considered essential services. Alex Lamick, CBC News, Surrey.
For more on recruiting more Indigenous people into policing, we're now joined by Dean Gladue, Region 3 Director with Métis Nation BC. He's also the Associate Minister of Justice, and he served as a Mountie for 26 years before retiring in 2015. Dean, you've said you never perhaps fully understood the full impact of racism until you joined the RCMP. What do you mean by that?
Well, in 1989, when I joined the RCMP, first of all, I was put into an all-native troop, as we called it at the time, right across from Canada. And just the way we were treated at Depot, there's a lot of stories to be told there. And then from there, coming onto the field and experiencing firsthand, because of my race and who I was, and seeing it within my own workforce, I never really understood it until then, and the impact it had on just us in general, historically, in Canada as well.
And in that 26 years that you spent serving the country and whatever various communities you served, how did your experience at Depot and beyond influence how you served?
Well, first of all, I'll say Depot was a great experience for me in a sense of the training and the challenge it does have. But, you peel back the onion and you realize that, there is that innuendo that was happening, as a Native troop and as a Native person that, especially when you go into a dominant Native community where crime rate was high, and then you would hear stories from in the inside, why, an example was, Dean, why don't you control your people? Would be one, which I remember hearing distinctly from a staff sergeant, which to me is just an appalling comment.
Yeah. You also spent some time as a recruiter for the RCMP. What was that experience like?
Well, the big thing was seeing the plus and why being a police officer. And I've always said, if we as Indigenous people want to make change in this country with policing or whatever it is, education, we need to also go on the inside. And then the inside means that we need individuals to get out there, train, to be good officers, work with the community, because I've always said, police are the community, but the community are the police. So it works hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And it's vital that we always will require police, no matter what culture, where we come from. And that's what I really got out of recruiting, was encouraging Indigenous peoples to get involved, to be a part of change. And I will say this, the RCMP has come a long way since 1989 when I joined, in regards to trying to recruit Indigenous people, but also be more inclusive. And that's a plus that I see that is happening within offices across Canada.
How hopeful are you that the RCMP can change as much as it needs to in order to increase recruitment and attract more Indigenous people to the force?
Well, I'm hopeful. First of all, you need leaders like myself. As a Métis Nation leader and working with Indigenous peoples throughout Canada, it's people like myself who experienced the organization and really emphasize the plus to it. One thing, it's a great career. It really is. When you look at the value and the looked after, as well as after the RCMP, as I retired after 26 years, how it looks after me and it's got a great pension program as well. And having said that, it's we're learning to be a servant and working with people. And I think it is a good time for Indigenous people to come into the RCMP and really be open-minded in how they can make change and also look up to people like myself as elders or seniors and as a senior police officer and look for direction.
Retired RCMP Officer Dean Gladue, thank you for speaking with us and sharing your experience.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. And like I said, I just want to finally say this, that the RCMP are a great organization, and like any others, they've got their flaws, but as a people, we can make this country a better place to live.